Stockport County top the table, Rotherham United remain winless, and Crawley Town win again. Welcome to the League One Lowdown review episode. Hello, this is the League One Lowdown from the Deck Podcast Network. It is game week 2, our review episode, and eagle-eyed viewers, not so eagle-eyed viewers, will also notice that Seb is back alongside me after Sam obviously stood in last week. He's back from his filming with the Gladiators. Seb, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yeah, good to be back. It feels like weird. It's been a few weeks off filming. Yeah, I can't give too much away, but I can tell you it wasn't me in the blue stretch lycra. I can tell you that. But no, it's good to be back.
Good news for everybody. That
good news, absolutely good news for everybody. What about you, Jamie? How's things been?
I've been all right. Busy. I think as busy as you've been. You've been obviously really busy with the filming and everything. I've been quite busy with lots of different other bits and pieces. And the football season obviously back. We kicked it off last week. Sam obviously did a sterling job standing in for our review episode. And this week, obviously, game week 2, lots to talk about. We're going to get through 6 or 7 of the games, but we'll start with the game we were both at. I was at the Lincoln Barnsley game in the press box. Sam, see, had done it already. Seb.
Sam.
This is the problem. I'm going to do this a lot, I think. Seb in the away end.
I'll put some glasses on and just cut my hair, and then we'll be the same.
And Seb, obviously, he was in the away end, the Barnsley end, and Barnsley won 2-1. I'll let you go first. What did you make to it?
Well, I'll be honest. It was we spoke before this before we hit record. It wasn't the best game in the world. I would define that as an ugly away win. But 3 points is 3 points in this sort of league. The first win of the season, first away victory as well. Under Darrell Clark since he took over. So I think there's certainly lots of positives you can take. But it wasn't pretty at times at all. I thought the first goal we scored, Cosgrove was a really great finish. Took it down for first touch, and then second touch was left footed right to the corner of the goal. But other than that, there wasn't too many standout moments of quality throughout from either side really. Throughout the game, but yeah, it was really good. I've not been to Lincoln before, so it was really nice. Ground is interesting. A couple of stands, quite quirky. It's probably the best way of putting it. But no, it was good. Yeah, a good fan zone as well. Good, nice day out. But yeah, and a good ugly away 3 points to come home back to South Yorkshire with.
I know. I remember messaging you that you said it was a bit quirky. It's a very traditional ground, or just a really old-fashioned ground. The newest, I think, the big stand at one end and the really dinky little stand I was in at the other. And behind the goals, the 2 small stands. Obviously, the away end's got a bit of an upgrade this year. It had a bit of a lick of paint. It was my first trip to the LNR this season, and they've done it up. They've put some cushions in the media that the rows have seen.
Okay, so spoiling you, Jamie, aren't they?
Spoiling, yeah. A new car park, a new media room, and some cushions. So it was all changed. But you mentioned Sam Cosgrove's goal. Obviously, he scored after 10 minutes. Lovely little finish. He took it down well. Ball came in from the left, and the defence sort of fell asleep a little bit. I think it was Sean Rowan couldn't control it, and Cosgrove set himself and planted it into the bottom corner. The second goal was a cross, another cross. They conceded a couple in the opening day of the season, headed goals from crosses, and Mark Roberts was on the end of a cross, nodded back across Wickens. Ben House got one back. I remember another thing we were talking about off there, that I was sort of very confident and wrote my pieces after about 50, 60 minutes and had everything sort of set and just hoping nothing happened. And then Ben House obviously scored with 20 minutes to go. So then I got a little bit twitchy that Lincoln might be able to get a comeback sort of complete. Obviously, they didn't in the end. But I think, I don't know how you feel about this, but a draw for me would have probably been the fair result.
Potentially. Obviously, I'm looking at this slightly biased. Potentially. I think Lincoln did miss some opportunities, but I think that's partly down to our new goalkeeper, Slanina. They were singing that all game. So I think he sort of did keep us in the game, and they probably could have finished a couple of chances that they had. But ultimately, we had 2 shots on targets and 2 goals. So we just had that clinical edge that perhaps Lincoln were just lacking. I think a draw would have been fair. Like I said, we didn't Barnsley didn't necessarily impress. But now did Lincoln really. So a draw might have been fair. But I think our goalkeeper, his performance alone, I think definitely deserved to stack that victory and those 3 points.
Yeah, you mentioned the keeper, Slanina. I think I'm saying that right. He's, if you had any doubts of where he was from, he's American, because every time he touched the ball or the ball went within 5 yards of him, all the away end were chanting USA, USA. It was like watching the Ryder Cup. It was unbelievable, really. It was his League One debut. Made a really, really good save. Jovan McCarmer got through on the counter attack, which was that was sort of Lincoln's only outlet, was a long ball and get themselves on the counter attack. He got through. Derek played him through and cut in on the left. It was a lovely save though. Got his arm out, firm palm. That's the only really action he had to do. The goal was unsavable, right in the corner. But everything he had to do, that being the main thing, he did really well on his debut. And it'd be interesting to see if he stays in the team, because obviously impressed him midweek in the cup and earned his spot and has done well again in the league this time.
Yeah, the whole goalkeeping situation at Barnsley over the summer has been quite interesting, to be fair. We had Ben Killett from last season, who was number 2, but never really sort of impressed to the point where you'd see him as a number 1 goalkeeper. And then we brought in Jackson Smith, who's worked under Darrell Clark before. But really interestingly, when all the shirt numbers came out, they left the number 1 vacant. So at that point, I think people thought, "Oh, okay, we're going to get a new goalkeeper in," and that keeper was in fact Gabriel Slanina, and he made 2 penalty saves in midweek in our penalty shootout win versus Wigan, and then from that, got his first start, and he impressed. Yeah, he had a couple of saves to make, came out quickly to gather the ball on the edge of the box. I think he could do with working on his kicking there at times where sort of he was just kicking it straight out of play. Because what he's trying to do, he's trying to get a little bit of a curve on it. But he just wasn't working, he just went straight out of play. So if there's one thing to work on, it would be his kicking. But I think overall, had a very solid league debut, and it could be a real asset. He's quite tall as well, which is very handy. And he's commanded his goal line and his box really well, coming out and catching. There's a little bit of miscommunication at one point with Miles.
Yes, that was hilarious.
So Desvigne sort of headed it back to Slanina, where Slanina came out of his box to try and clear it. So they were sort of both racing each other to get back.
Yeah, we headed it back to the keeper that wasn't there, and
exactly, yeah.
But
luckily he was dealt with in the end. But yeah, that was probably the only bit of a wobble, and his kicking. But apart from that, he had a really solid League One debut, and I thought, for his performance alone, 3 points deserved.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was just quite interesting, really, just how poor Lincoln looked in certain aspects. I know last season how well they did at the end with that 16-game unbeaten run, and I don't know what's happened in the summer, but they weren't bad, but they just weren't anywhere near where they were during that run, and they just really quite toothless, I thought, up front. Didn't really show much. The goal, it was a corner, wasn't it? Corner came in, and it was a really, really poor corner that O'Connor kept alive with a nice little flick, and it was a really nice finish on the turn from Ben House. But that was really their best chance, other than the counter-attack, where he was caught on the break a little bit. So it is interesting that they are lacking a little bit. And one of the questions we've got, League One, the number 1 lowdown on Twitter, if you want to send any questions in for future episodes. But one of the questions we've got is, do Lincoln need any more signings? And Michael Scavala, one of the things he said after the game was that he wants depth. And then it came out this morning, reports that Callum Wright, midfielder from Plymouth, is being kept an eye on. But for me, I don't think the midfield is the problem. I think midfield is probably the most stacked area of the pitch. It'd be interesting to see what you think, Seb, as more, I guess, an outsider, seeing Lincoln sort of as a one-off. But for me, they need something a bit more up front. and the defence is very naive and weak without, especially to aerial balls. The ball comes into the box, they just seem to just panic, and it's just there's something not quite there.
No, I certainly agree with Lincoln needing to strengthen up top. They didn't really cause the Barnsley defence much harm at all during the course of the game. I don't know if that's sort of because the Barnsley defence deserve credit, or because the Lincoln attack just weren't there. I think it's a little bit of both. The Barnsley defence is, quite established, quite tall players, so I think they dealt with balls into the box quite well. But it equally, like, there was no one desperate to get on the end of balls from a Lincoln point of view. Chasing into the box, pressuring the Barnsley defence, because for what all the qualities that Barnsley defence does have, they're not the fastest. So I thought that would have been sort of a point that Lincoln would have caught on.
And when they looked most dangerous, that was it, wasn't it? It's when they were running in behind.
Exactly, yeah. They're using pace, pressing the defence, and just using strength and speed. But that just wasn't happening really at all. But when it did happen, that was, like you said, that's when they were sort of creating semi-chances, if you like. They just weren't doing it on a consistent basis. I look at someone last year, a bit like Joe Taylor. He had pace. He was willing to press. Lincoln just don't have that sort of player up top anymore this season. Funnily enough, Joe Taylor's been linked to with a move to Barnsley. So
he's been linked with half the League One, though, hasn't he?
Well,
he's
I know
linked
that's
to
true.
Huddersfield and everything. He's sort of,
that's true.
Who knows?
I definitely think up top is where Lincoln need to strengthen. Just having seen them off sort of a one-off. I think the midfield, there was some nice little sort of intricate plays going on. Defense was okay. Wasn't necessarily bad. Wasn't necessarily good. There's a new goalkeeper in there as well. I think he had an alright game as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, still new to the game, so can't jump into it. But up front, definitely, I would suggest. And if that's what the manager's alluded to, sort of add a bit of depth. You can't just rely on the same couple of players up top. You need a rotation, and you do need that squad depth up top. Is the most important area of the pitch. So if this is anywhere where Lincoln need depth, it's up front for me.
Definitely, I agree with that. And we'll slide on over to our second game. Stockport County, another win for them. They are top of the tree after 2 games. Not that it matters, but I'm sure Stockport County fans are making the most of it. 3-0 win for them away at Blackpool. We talked a little bit with Sam last week about sort of Blackpool being really bad away from home, and obviously they lost at Crawley last week. But that poor away form, it seems maybe it's poor home form as well. I mean, who expected a 3-0 defeat to Stockport? I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's certainly a result that I myself wouldn't have called before the fixtures were played, and quite a lot of people, I'm sure. But yeah, surprising result. Blackpool, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I still don't think they've got enough quality in the side, really. If you look at sort of the signings that they've brought in over the summer, I still think there's a couple of gaps that need filling. Whether they'll get filled in by the end of the window, I'm not sure. But whether the squad is what they've got is what they will have, that potentially could be it. Blackpool struggling really, poor form away from home, but to lose 3-0 on your opening home day of the opening home match of the season. First match of the season, to lose 3-0 to Stockport, who decided just come up from League Two. It is quite poor. Having said that, you have to praise Stockport massively. That's 5 goals in the first 2 games in a brand new league, a brand new division, with a couple of brand new players as well, and they're sitting top of the pile in League One with 2 wins from 2. So certainly they'll not be the ones grumbling. Blackpool, there are definitely questions over it, but Stockport will be very happy. Particularly Louis Barry, he spent time on loan in League Two last season with
at Stockport,
at Stockport, with the club, and then signed on a permanently in the summer, and has absolutely improved, absolutely shown sort of why Stockport have fought to get him on a permanent basis.
Yeah, 2-2 for him. The other 2 goals were from substitutes, so that's always a good sign, isn't it? That
absolutely,
the manager's making changes and they're coming in and doing the business. And yeah, like you said, they've just stepped up absolutely seamlessly. Obviously, early days, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, it's still time. Yeah.
They have made that step up very, very nicely. No shots on target from Blackpool in the game. 5 for Stockport, 11 shots in total. In terms of the stats, obviously, we mentioned the game we were at. You look at the stats, it was a bit of a domination from the away side. But we have a question coming in, again from the Twitter, the X, I guess, as we should say. So we have got a question in, and that is, can Blackpool do better than Neil Critchley? For me, a little bit early. We're only 2 games in. Let's just settle down a little bit. And they did win 4-0 in the Cup in midweek. So it's not all doom and gloom from a Blackpool perspective. But in the league, improvements are definitely needed, aren't they, Seb?
No, I agree, absolutely. Losing to Stockport and Crawley in their 2 games so far this season, it's pretty poor. It's definitely not what the Tangerine fans would have expected. For me, it's far too early to be making any sort of judgment about managerial positions. I know we've seen a couple of managers leave their roles already. Certainly in the Championship at Preston, it's after 1 game. I mean, that was just nonsensical, really. But anyway, they're the Championship. So, yeah, I think it's too early to be making any sort of judgment or comment. And I think Critchley's had success at Blackpool before. There's no reason why he can't have success at Blackpool again. Albeit with a different sort of playing squad, but he knows the club, he knows what it takes to get out of the league, and he's had good experiences elsewhere, working under Steven Gerrard at Villa and working at Liverpool before that. I think those sort of experiences are massive and are pretty pivotal, in fact, to become a good manager, working off other world-class managers. So Critchley is definitely a great manager, and it's far too early, in my opinion, to be chatting about if he's the right man for Blackpool.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess a question in a similar vein for the last game of the first half. What is going wrong at Rotherham United? A very simple question. Thank you again, whoever it is sent it in. 0-0 for them, home this time to Bristol Rovers. 2 draws so far. What is going wrong? Because,
Well,
I mean, the stats at this one, they read better than they did at the first game, but obviously it's the same result. I'll let you go first, Seb, and then...
Well, it's all a bit confusing, really, at Rotherham. They brought in so many, they got all the transfer window deals done pretty early, and sort of established themselves as quite an early favourite for promotion out of League One. But the results so far are not sort of showing that at all. 2 0-0 draws in the league so far. It's not two draws. It's not been great. It's a great question. What is going wrong at Rotherham? I think ultimately just need time for the players to gel together, time to get Steve Evans' ways across to perhaps some of the new signings, time for the fans to get on board a little bit with sort of some tweaks that Evans is likely to make. So what's going wrong? I don't know. I think people just need a little bit more patience. But then to sort of contradict what I've just said there, I guess the reason for bringing the players in early was so that the team did have the time.
He could gel in pre-season, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not. I don't think there's one sort of, this is what's happening wrong, this is what's going wrong. Because ultimately, if you look at it on paper, they have some of the best players in the league, a manager that knows how to get out of the league and has had success in the league, and a club that is a pretty big club with a decent budget that can have got out of the league many times before. So it should all add up, but at the moment it isn't. So something somewhere is going wrong.
I think just to interject that, I mean, the first game, it did seem that something was definitely wrong. This game, they dominated, really, just without scoring a goal. I mean, they had 20 shots. The XG, I don't know what sort of stock people put into XG, our listeners, viewers, but 2.23 for Rotherham and 0.49 for the Gas. So that is quite a big difference, and it does show that they have created chances enough to score 2 goals, but they've obviously just not put those away. So I think maybe the problem in this game was different than the first, when they were pretty poor against Exeter, and in this game instead they curated well but didn't put the ball in the back of the net. So I think that's an easier problem to solve, isn't it? Obviously.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But then, surely, then I guess the argument is that they have the players that could put the ball in the back of the net. They just aren't at the moment in time.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to just to keep an eye on, because they have spent in the summer. They've brought in a lot. They've brought in a lot of players known to the club, but they've ticked that box on Football Manager, and they brought all those players in. But yeah, it does seem to just be taking time to settle properly. Steve Evans, in his interview with BBC Radio Sheffield, said it was Bristol Rovers' best point in their history. They didn't get out their own half. So sour grapes, I think, there. Rather than directing his anger at Gary Caldwell in the first game, he's directed his anger just at Bristol Rovers in general this time. But Bristol, for the part, it's worth mentioning, they defended well. On the highlights, a couple of good saves, and the backs against the wall stuff, it looked like on the sharp little highlights package over on ITV. But yeah, another point. I guess that's really the headline, isn't it, for Rotherham, in terms of it's 2 games and that they've not got a win on the board, and that is, as much as it is early doors, and everything we say you've got to temper by saying, but it is so early on in the season. It is a worrying sign if you're a Rotherham fan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is, particularly given the hype that they had pre-season, particularly given the signings they made. You can't help but be a little bit sort of questionable over what is happening. But I'm sure, give it a few couple of weeks and everything will settle into place, and they'll start sort of matching the expectation that was set to them.
Right then, so we'll head to a quick ad break, and when we come back, we'll talk about wins for Crawley, Huddersfield, and Peterborough, as well as that 6-goal thriller at Mansfield. Welcome back. We'll dive straight back in. Another win for Crawley, to use Sam's term from the preview episode. Scott Lindsay's a genius. He's won 2 in 2. No one saw this coming, did they? And yeah, a late goal, 1-0 win away from home. A bit of a smash and grab. Maybe not. It didn't look like on the stats that it was that. It looked pretty even overall, but they get that late goal and they have won. But I think maybe the more interesting part is the other side of it. Obviously, the Cambridge side, 3 losses in 3 for them, including the cup in midweek, and 2 of those, the 2 league games, have come against the promoted sides. Crawley this week, obviously in the opening game they lost to Stockport. So we have a question that I think you can bounce off to give you some thoughts. I think it's a very similar answer you're going to give me to what you said about Neil Critchley. But is Gary Monk under pressure?
I'm going to give my political answer, and I'm going to give you a sort of a seesaw answer is what I would say. I don't think he's under pressure. A bit like what sort of I'm going to copy and paste from earlier. It's far too early in the season to be questioning any manager's position. The fact saying that any manager's under pressure. What I would say is I reckon that their first victory cannot come soon enough. Yeah. Particularly for teams that are likely to be at the bottom come the end of the season, which in the past few seasons Cambridge have. The earlier they can start picking up points, the better it will be towards the back end of the season. So the earlier they can start getting, a couple of draws, couple of wins under the belt, will be better in the long run. I know. I don't think it's a concern. Two wins without 2 wins, 2 defeats. Two games, 2 defeats. I don't think it's a bad record. It's only when it probably gets to about 5 or 6 defeats in a row when sort of concern will be growing, like it would do it in a normal time during the season. I just think because it's the start of the season, there's almost sort of this added pressure. But I think two games, not enough at all to be asking any questions. I think teams towards the bottom of the end are always going to be facing a little bit of an uphill challenge, and defeats come with that. Yeah. So I wouldn't be worried for Gary Monk.
Yeah, it feels like I'm agreeing with you too much, but I'm going to say exactly the same thing, really. The one I put in my notes, potentially dangerous for Gary Monk, but it's early days, and that sort of just does temper everything, doesn't it? That it's obviously a really poor start, and they'd have looked on paper, they're playing 2 promoted sides. You're wanting points out of that. It's probably as good a start of season as you could get. Obviously, there's no bad teams in the division, it turns out. I mean, we all said Crawley were a bad team at the start of the season, and they've
proven
turned out
it's all
to be
wrong.
one of the better, at least off the first 2 games. And so there's no points you can take for granted. But if you look at that as a fan of any team in the division, you're playing 2 promoted sides, and you're looking at that and you're going, we're going to get something out of those. And obviously they haven't at all. And at home as well, they've not scored again. And going down
that'll be
1-0,
disappointing as well. That'll be disappointing. I think the biggest thing will be sort of the whole idea of making your home a fortress. To lose, I think will be disappointing for Gary Monk, especially losing to a team that have just come up, as you mentioned there. I think that'll be doubly disappointing because for teams that do struggle at the bottom of the end of the table, which I imagine Cambridge will come the end of the season, you have to pick up as many points as you can do at home, and they just haven't done so against a team that you'd expected them to beat.
Yeah, and they've got Blackpool next week. Obviously, the other teams we mentioned in the first half, another one that's struggling. So that'll be interesting just to see how they fare in that one too, with the early strugglers going against each other. But the preview podcast will be across that for you on Thursday with Callum and Sam. So we'll move along to Huddersfield and a 2-1 win for them against Stevenage. It was a 95th minute penalty as well for Stevenage. So perhaps it looks a little bit better for Stevenage than it actually was, because Huddersfield had the better of it. 7 goals in 3 for them in all competitions, and they dominated possession here, chances and XG, non-penalty XG, that is, that they really dominated. So positive signs for Huddersfield early on.
Yeah, a positive sign, exactly that. On Michael Duff's first league home game of the season, and I think it can be incredibly impressive, particularly given the sort of the runs Stevenage went on last season. They did really well, but I think this is sort of Michael Duff starting to implement his side a little bit more. Great opening day victory away at Peterborough, who were a great side in the league and have been for quite a few years, and then to beat Stevenage, who were sort of the standout last season. I think that's pretty good going. You could have looked at it on paper as a pretty tough start, but they've absolutely sort of smashed it through both teams really. Plus a cup victory midweek to Morecambe as well. 2-1. Sorry, in fact, to Stevenage. They'll be disappointed to not keep that clean sheet.
Yeah, so it's always a bit of a pain, is it? You get so close and don't keep a clean sheet.
Exactly. They'll be annoyed with that, and I know Michael Duff is that sort of manager, head coach that does get annoyed over little things. So that'll definitely be something that will have irritated him. But nevertheless, 3 points is 3 points, particularly when it's your first match at a new club, as it is for Michael Duff. And first home game for quite a few players, including Sorensen, who got 2 both assists since signing from Lincoln. I was really surprised. Well, not really surprised. He was a standout for me at Lincoln last season, and then for him to get the move to Huddersfield under Michael Duff, I'm surprised he left Lincoln, but ultimately for him, I think it is the next step, and he's absolutely proven himself that he can be pushing in the top clubs in the league. So yeah, two assists for him for Huddersfield.
You've stolen my thunder. I was gonna move on to Les Sorensen. He's just fantastic. He's probably the best wing back in the league last season. He definitely was at Lincoln.
Yeah,
he
I
was
was going to say,
unbelievable.
you saw quite a bit of him last season, didn't you?
Yeah, saw quite a lot of him really, and yeah, he was dynamite in that team. He was really so important to how Lincoln played, as from being a pretty average centre midfielder, probably being generous really, to being revolutionised. Mark Kennedy moved him out wide initially, and obviously carried on that with Michael Scamalla into what he's just become unbelievably good at right wing back, and he adds so much energy and excitement. And I mean, I remember a game against Charlton last season, and he had something like 10 shots.
Wow.
Like just him,
Wow.
he was on fire. Just you get so far forward, he's almost a winger, but he's got the energy and got the pace to get back and do the defensive work as well. So he's the complete package as a wing back. I wasn't surprised he left. Obviously, he had a a year's extension triggered in the summer, but it became pretty clear that he wasn't going to re-sign unless Lincoln got promoted this season, which is quite the gamble because you don't want to lose out on what is believed to be $500,000, which is a lot of money in League One, really.
Oh yeah.
My only surprise is that he didn't go to the Championship. I was surprised he stayed in the
Yes.
division.
Yeah.
Because of how well he was last season. But obviously Huddersfield is still a step up from Lincoln, a team pushing for the automatics, I guess, rather than having an outside shot at the playoffs.
But just in Huddersfield in general, I think they've done really well over the summer to keep quite a lot of their core players from last season. We look at sort of Michael Hellick, Tom Lees, Jonathan Hogg, Josh Karoma, who are all pretty good players. Karoma was on the score sheet at the weekend as well. Who were all really good players. And then you add in that Ben Wiles, you add in that Anthony Evans, you add in that Herbie Kane, and they are cooking up a really good team and a team to definitely not mess about with, really. There's some great players under a great manager, Michael Duff, and I think they can really kick on this season and have proven so already with what league is it? Was it 10 goals in 3 games, something like
that? 7. They're
seven,
still good.
Not
it's more
quite
than obviously more than 2 a game.
Yeah, 7 goals in 3 games, including one in the cup. I think that's immense, and that just shows the sheer just power that they're going to have this season in the league. And for me, I think they could be one to run away with it.
Fantastic. Well, nice early prediction. Obviously, we didn't get you on the prediction episode.
Yeah. Nice.
So, are you going against us? I mean, I have to interject on a bit of a side note. Obviously, the 4 of us, we had Ryan, the owner of the deck, sort of sliding in with some predictions. We all put Birmingham to finish top. Are you going against us? Do you think Huddersfield are going to win the league?
Yeah, I'm not confident in Birmingham. I think Huddersfield. Yeah, which pains me to say because I think Michael Duff is doing exactly sort of copying what he did with Barnsley a few years ago. Sort of going to them after relegation. He's going to Huddersfield after relegation. Sort of not changing too much, keeping a lot of the players, but just tinkering slight things in the squad. And I genuinely think he'll go one step better with Huddersfield than he did with Barnsley a few years ago. And I think they'll get promoted. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's thrown a spanner into the works. It's interesting to keep
nothing like a bit of disagreement, is there? You know.
No, exactly. Well, one of the teams you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Peterborough. They're the next game for us. They won 4-1 at Shrewsbury. One of the Sky Sports Plus games for the weekend. Poku had a lovely goal. He had 2. Randall with the other 2. I mean, they went 1-0 down as well, and which was a little bit of annoyance for me. I had Jed Steer in my fantasy team for the EFL fantasy team, so I was a bit disappointed about that. But a good win overall, and they've clearly improved a lot from opening day. A couple of my friends are Peterborough fans, and they were saying how awful they were in that first game of the season. And in this game, they blew it away. XG just over 3. 18 shots, 11 on target. I mean, it used to be at Doncaster Rovers. Remember Darren Ferguson ball, like high energy, you score 4, we'll score 5 sort of stuff. And a good win, emphatic away from home, Seb.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah, 4-1. I think, again, the only disappointment for them will be conceding that early goal. But to go 1-0 down, to come back up to win 4-1, I think that shows incredible character, incredible resilience to come back and probably beat a Shrewsbury side that you would have backed Peterborough to beat anyway. But certainly, you know, when you do go 1-0 down, to score, to get the equaliser goal just 2 minutes afterwards and then go on to win, I think that's great. And a couple of goals each from Poku and Randall. Poku in particular had a smashing season last season. I'm very surprised he's still at Peterborough.
Well, I'll jump in there then, because you put me on nice as one of the questions we've got, and it is exactly that. Will Poku be the next talent to leave Peterborough?
I think he will, yeah. I know Mason Clark's already gone this summer, and I can quite likely see Poku will be next to join him out the exit door at Peterborough. They're very good at sort of bringing in players, developing them for a couple of years, and then selling them on, and then bringing in another sort of talented player from the lower leagues, if you like. And I can already see that. I bet that Peterborough have already sort of eyed Poku as their next position, if you like, next player to replace, and therefore he'll be the next one to go. But I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think he's had a great couple of seasons there at the club, and I think that's credit to himself and also the staff around him at Posh. But yeah, I think he will be the next one to go. He's got 2 goals at the weekend, along with Randall. Yeah, I think for the next one out. But yeah, for me, I think he'll go. I think he'll go.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. You
No,
put me on perfect. It was too perfect an opportunity
to
slide in one of the questions we've got from our viewers.
It was Mason and Poku. I've on the wing either side last season that were just sort of an immense force. And Mason Clark has gone. Poku is still there. Obviously, they also lost Clark Harris, although he didn't play that much last season.
Ronnie Edwards, Harrison Burrows.
Edwards scored as well. Burrows, yeah. So they sort of have more or less lost all the star men of last season. So I really wouldn't be surprised if Poku was the next to leave. I think a lot of the squad that they have didn't necessarily play star role last season or were brought in over the summer. So if there's anyone to go next, I think it would be Poku, yeah.
Fantastic. And on the flip side, we'll mention Shrewsbury. They're rock bottom, conceded 7 goals in 2 games this week. It was 3-3 in midweek against Notts County, obviously, of League Two. They did win on penalties, Shrewsbury, but 7 goals shipped in just 2 games. Obviously, Shea Dunkley left this summer to Chesterfield, but I think it's hard to pin all the problems defensively on him leaving. But there's definitely something to fix there, at least defensively. I mean, going forward, not amazing either, but defensively, it's a real issue and a real problem that needs sorting early because you don't want it to get away from you.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, and they've only scored 1 goal in 2, which is not too big an issue. But
in the league, yeah.
It's not too big an issue. But at what point does it sort of stop and do goals sort of come a bit more consistently? Lost a big player in Dunkley in the summer. He's a big character. And for me, that up top they're relying too much on an aging John Marquis. So I'm not sold on that. In terms of at the back, they still have Nsiala, but again, he's probably past his best a little bit. At his second spell at the club, his first spell, he sort of in his prime, was now he's probably sort of only has a few more years left in him, really. Aging in age, yeah. So they do need to improve. Particularly shipping 7 goals in 2 games is not great at all. We spoke about Huddersfield scoring 7 in 3, which is a great record, but conceding 7 in 2 looks bad, really, doesn't it? So definitely improvements. I'm really not sold on Shrewsbury. There's no real. I guess Harrison Biggins coming across from Doncaster would be their sort of standout, but I don't think he's yet to star this season. But in terms of I'm just looking at the squad now. There's no real standout quality. I think Marcus has passed it. Winchester's been there a while, and Ciara's probably passed his best as well. Biggins will probably stand up, but I don't think he's had that great of a start to the season. So
I think for me, something I said at the start of the season, I think he'd get found out in League One. So I think we differ maybe on sort of how positive we are on Harrison Biggins. All credit. If he has a good season, fair play to him, or at least an average season, because it's hard to have a good season in a bad team. But for me, I don't think. I think if you're pegging hopes on Harrison Biggins in League One, you've got trouble. You've got real trouble.
I'm clutching at straws here, Jim. I'm trying to find something to be positive.
I can tell.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot going on at Shrewsbury, but I think Shrewsbury fans are used to it.
Well, they were very low scorers last season. I think maybe with the lowest scorers, last season. And I don't see that changing. And defensively, it has become a real issue for them early on. But early days, they need to get that sorted quickly. Obviously, a week left in the transfer window.
Yes.
So that needs sorting. Maybe they can bring someone in to fix that problem there. But we'll end our last game to sort of talk about a bit more in depth. Is the 6-goal thriller at Mansfield. They drew 3-3 in the end with Burton Albion. A real topsy-turvy game. They were 2-1 up, Nigel Clough's side, then 3-2 down, 92nd minute. They thought they'd won it. thought they had their first win of the season under new management, Burton. But then in the 97th minute, Aidan Flint, I think it was, that was taken down in the box, penalty given, and Lee Gregory, the experienced man, steps up and puts it in. I mean, you just watch the highlights and you go, what a game that is. I mean, 6 goals, end-to-end, topsy-turvy, a proper game of football.
Absolutely. I've just spoke in the last game about sort of a couple of players being past it. You could probably put Lee Gregory and Aidan Flint in that one, but in that sort of category of players being past it. But
it's a fine line between experienced and past it, isn't it? But they're treading in the right side of it.
They are, but they've obviously combined to get that late goal. Flint, having a foul go against him, and go forward. Sorry, and then Gregory steps up to take the penalty in the dying moments of the game to get his second goal in 2 league games. So absolutely incredible, really. Sort of 3-3. 6-goal thriller, and we're only in Matchday 2. So typical League One for you. So lots happening. Couple an own goal in there as well. Penalty. Billy Bowden brace as well. I think he's a great player.
He got 9 last season. He's got 3 in 3 games this season. So I don't know what.
He didn't quite get the numbers and sort of playing time at Oxford. I think that he wanted last season. So has moved to Burton in the summer, and 3 goals in the season so far. That's an incredible return for him.
They've got that front 3 firing, haven't they? Orsi, Whitfield, Billy Bowden, they've all at least got a goal and an assist. They both, all 3 of them, I beg your pardon, are contributing goals and assists early on. That's what you want to see. New manager, lots of new players, 20, I think, in the end signings. And they've hit the ground running a little bit. Obviously, lost on the opening day, conceded 3 goals, and have drew here conceding 3 goals. But they've scored 5 goals in 2 league games and yet only got 1 point. So I feel, for me, that would be the worry, that on the other side of things, they're free flowing, I beg your pardon, bit of a tongue twister, going forward. But defensively, that is where the issue is. And we have got our final question of the day does relate to that. After conceding another 3 goals, do you think Burton's recruitment has been League One level? A little bit harsh, maybe. I mean, they've brought in a lot. It's been a big turnover.
Yeah. Go on, what do you think? Go on, Jamie. What do you reckon?
I think it's a little bit harsh. I think their recruitment hasn't been amazing, but in sort of the glut of signings, there's been a few standouts, and I think Billy Bowden's probably going to turn out to be a very good player for them this season. Didn't obviously hit the ground running like he said at Oxford, but I feel like he could make a real difference for Burton. Under new management, it's difficult early on, isn't it? You're not guaranteed to hit the ground running at the start of the season. So I think it's obviously a positive that under the new manager, they have scored goals and they're very good going forward. But obviously the defence is what needs work. 40 shots in this game, 14 on target, and obviously the 6 goals. So a real thriller. But do you agree with that in terms of maybe it's a bit harsh to judge now? Just see how they get on through the season, but there are potential in at least a few of those signings.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's far too early. Again, far too early to sort of to judge. But I think you sort of answered your own question there a little. Not your own question, but sort of you almost contradicting yourself a little bit. So you said recruitment was good. For example, Billy Bowden, which I agree with, but I think the recruitment has only been good in the attacking sort of senses. I agree what you're saying in terms of Billy Bowden and Whitfield and Orsi up top. A lot of good options.
25 last season, I think.
Exactly. They're all good options, but I wouldn't say the recruitment at the back has been great, and therefore I wouldn't say the recruitment at the back has been League One level. If for a team like Burton, they have to keep the back tight. They had John Brayford there for so many years. They've had Oshalaja there. He's just moved to Mansfield. So these sort of players that have a little bit of League One know-how, a little bit of experience.
I mean, Tom Hamer gone to Lincoln, obviously.
Exactly, yeah. So players that sort of know what they were doing, that have been at it a while, and are a good, solid League One level. We don't have to sort of star in young centre halves that are going to play the Premier League. Burton just get players in.
I mean, they brought in Van Cooten, didn't they, from Stevenage? And I think he's obviously League One level, did okay at Stevenage.
Yeah, I still don't think it's amazing, and sort of the balance of the back three which they have been playing. I don't think it's quite there yet. There's still time, don't get me wrong. They signed a lot of players, so there could be players that come in and swap and whatnot. So there's still time. I don't think they're to answer the question that was asked. Through our viewers on our X page, I don't think their transfer window has been League One quality.
Yeah. Okay.
Overall,
that's interesting. I think maybe I'm just a bit more generous. I think for Burton, if they stay up, it's a good season.
Yeah.
And I think their signings have been mid-table, lower mid-table League One overall. There's a few of them in there you think, not sure about that, but a few of them as well have looked good, and it's just difficult to judge. It's such a big turnover.
It is. Yeah.
You've lost a lot, you've gained a lot, but they've gelled at least going forward, which, if anything, I think that might be more difficult. Like, getting a team to score goals is not easy. You can get a team to set up and sit back and defend and get a point.
Yeah.
Is easier to do than getting a team that is free flowing and scoring goals. So I think they've obviously mastered early on that part, the scoring the goals and getting forward, creating. But it's the defence that is the concern, and we'll see how long that lasts. Because if it lasts another couple of months, then that becomes a real issue, because they're going to get dragged in to a proper relegation scrap if they can't keep goals out of their net.
And no doubt the manager will then go as well, and sort of then it's a vicious cycle. Burton's an interesting one because he did so well for so many years. Getting from League Two to League One to the Championship, and then have just sort of steadied a bit in League One over the past few years. So they're an interesting one, Burton. And as you said, the target has massively downgraded to just be happy in League One and to avoid relegation. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, I think I'm not so impressed with the transfer window.
Interesting. Well, we'll see who's right and who's wrong come January, I guess.
It's a long time, a long time to get through, but
definitely. But elsewhere then, Charlton Athletic, they left it late. Sorry, Sam, but they beat Leyton Orient 1-0 in that derby down there in the capital. Northampton Town came from behind to beat Exeter 2-1. A good 3 points for them. Reading 2-0 winners against Wigan. A goalless draw on Sunday's TV game. Sky won't be happy about that. Bolton and Wrexham, a goalless draw there. And Birmingham, a 3-2 win against Wycombe. Alfie May on the score sheet. Yet again, anything you want to pick out of that? Seb, what's your fancy out of those scorelines?
Well, when you were chatting before we recorded, we couldn't believe that it was 0-0 between Bolton and Wrexham.
Yeah, it really. I remember I was speaking to Sam, and that was the game. The goals were going to come in that game. A real shock to me.
Yeah. So that was a surprise. I think Birmingham winning again isn't a surprise really, but although I don't necessarily agree with you that they're going to come first, they have got some talented players in there.
They're going to be up there at the least.
They are going to be up there, and they've evidently shown the quality again. So far this season, that's a win and a draw from the 2 league games. So not bad.
Fantastic. Yeah, not bad at all, is it? It's an okay start.
An okay start.
And we've said it enough, but early days. So all will be revealed, I guess, in a couple of months. By Christmas, you start to worry about the table, don't you? So we'll see where it goes.
And obviously, we've got until the end of the month before the
the transfer window is not finished yet.
So still, players could come in, players could leave. There's still all sorts of. I'm not going to get too much on, but I don't necessarily agree with all this sort of having the season on while the window's open. But as part of that, there's a lot of excitement and sort of a bit of trepidation, really, in terms of not necessarily having a guarantee that the players that you start with are going to be here come a month later when the window closes. So that's quite interesting, and I think there could be some movement both up and down the league in players ins, players out. So yeah, still a lot to play for. still a lot of movement. I'm sure of it in League One.
Interesting stuff. So, thank you, Seb, for joining me back.
No problem, good to be back.
Like it's a one-off special. You're not here next week. I'm back
Well,
on holiday.
Back on holiday next week, yeah. But then after that, I will be back for good. I promise.
That's it.
Yeah, I will be back for good. I'm off to the other side of the country, to Canada, for a week, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah, jetting across the Atlantic.
Jetting across, yeah.
But thanks everyone for listening, for watching.
Yes, thanks. Yeah.
On YouTube, be sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're listening, as well as obviously our review.
Yeah, give us a 5
Yes,
star.
that's it. That's what you have to say, isn't it? 5-star review on your podcast. But in seriousness, they do help, don't they? Sort of get up the rankings, that sort of thing. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Comment whatever your thoughts are. If you've agreed with us, disagreed with us, just absolutely anything. If you agreed with me, do comment. If you agree with Seb, maybe just leave it.
but
Sam
as well, yeah.
Yes, Sam will be back alongside Callum Thursday for their preview podcast, and I'll be back maybe with Sam, maybe with Callum. That spice things up. Have a Lincoln Massive next week, yes. But it will be me and a special guest next week for another review episode. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you again next week on the League One Lowdown.